Some of it I will turn off the lights so you can see it a little more clearly, but can you read that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I collect stories. That's what I do. I live my life to collect stories. So let's start at the end. Ultimate is played actively by over 1 million people in the United States. It was first played as an organized sport in 1968 at Columbia High School, although it was invented in Amherst, Massachusetts. What you are seeing right now is ESPN's coverage of last year's College Ultimate Championships. Pitt is playing UCF, University of Central Florida. It's a fantastic game. You can watch it streaming online. It's still there. The governing body in the United States is USA Ultimate. Ultimate is currently played in approximately 45 or 46 countries, depending on the metric for, I think that's how many NGBs exist. NGB is National Governing Body. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, just recognized Ultimate on the first level of official sports. You can hit this.
I was going to try to see if half the lights lit.
I didn't see it. Is there half? There you go.
How's that? Is that better?
That's better. Excellent. So, this is kind of the end of the story. This is where Ultimate is right now. It is the fastest growing team sport in the United States. And in the next, I would say 25 to 35 years, you will see it played at the Olympic level. A couple years ago, I found myself in the West Bank. And again, last summer I came in, met up with Laura, who's in the bottom left right there, and her aunt and her mother and her sisters and a couple of her cousins. I was there traveling with one of the CEOs of Ultimate Peace, and we went to meet up with her after camp and see her family, and we were invited to go shopping. Of course, you know, I love shopping, so why not? Let's go shopping. So we turned around, took a taxi back to checkpoint 300, went through the first turnstile, went through the second turnstile, went through the first security checkpoint. I got stuck in the second security checkpoint as it was closed because it's one person through at a time. You get to the end, I take out my passport, which I'd done many times walking across the border between the West Bank and Israel. And I was the last one through, and the group was in front of me, and one of the young girls came up to me right after I had walked up. And the standard thing for Americans crossing into the West Bank is I bring out my passport, like I'd always done, and they see the American passport through the glass, and they just kind of wave me through. Everybody else is kind of getting checked out, things are getting stamped. They're just like, whatever, keep going. I get through, and the younger girl says something in Arabic that I don't understand. I don't speak Arabic, so that was natural that I didn't understand it. The group kind of giggles a little bit, and I asked what she said. The mother said, "She thinks you're lucky." So, to put that in perspective, I'd come in from northern Vermont, an ocean away, and I could walk across the border an arbitrary number of times, that she had to get special permission to cross, that she had a special passport because it was 3 months, within 3 months after Easter, and Christians living in the West Bank could get 3-month passes to cross without special one-time, I guess say passes again to get back in. So that's the end. How did I get there? 3 people. You might recognize one of them up there. First one in the upper left, that's Ava Shine. She was a student of mine and an Ultimate player of mine up in St. Johnsbury. She ended up coming out to be an assistant coach at Ultimate Peace. She started playing Ultimate in St. Johnsbury. In the middle, you see Hamoud Adajna. He graduated from Hotchkiss 3 years ago. I met him when he joined a club Ultimate team that I coach, and turned out after we got on the field that he was involved with the organization that I was just joining at the time, Ultimate Peace. But Hamuda grew up in Bethlehem, the West Bank, and then you might recognize him now. That's me right there. One of my, I think it's my sophomore year at Pomona, before I grew a beard, and my hair was getting longer at that time, kind of feeling the pull of the California gravity. But here are 3 of the characters that are going to make appearances in some of the stories that I'm going to tell. As I said before, the first organized team was formed at Columbia High School in 1968, 69. It was first taught to those players by somebody who was going to Amherst College. He taught it to them at a summer camp at Northfield Mount Herman, which is notable because it has one of the longest running varsity programs in the country behind Columbia High School. One of the more notable aspects to Ultimate Frisbee is that it is governed by something called Spirit of the Game, which is a belief in sportsmanship above all else. That's one way to put it. Many people summarize it differently. This is not unique. Sports have this ethic. Treat people fairly, treat people with respect. How it's lived is a little different in Ultimate. There are no third-party officiants in Ultimate games. You have to make your calls on the field. There's a system for agreement. There's a system for disagreeing and moving on. There's a system for what happens in each case. But the fundamental core ethic of Ultimate is that the players control the game. So a more accurate way to say it is that Ultimate, it's not that it doesn't have refs, it has 14. Everybody makes calls. There's certain calls that only certain players can make at certain times, but everybody is an active call-making participant in the game at all times. You'll see that in the bottom left, that's a picture of one of my boys making a big catch at the Youth Club Championships. The fastest growing segment of Ultimate in the United States is currently the youth segment, which is great to see because for a long time the game was dominated. It still continues to be dominated by college age players. Most sports in the United States numerically are dominated by far by kids. If you look at a population graph of the ages of players, the average age, for example, of a member of USA Swimming, anybody want to guess what the average age of a member of USA Swimming is?
14.
It's like 11, yeah. It's 11 or so, yeah. Vast majority numbers-wise is kids. Vast majority. We play less sports as we get older. A little different at Ultimate. It tends to be a pillar. People tend to keep playing it, which is great to see. It's a little bit about the history. And what you do see in the middle there are two players at Camp Ultimate Peace, which is one of the things we're going to talk about, discussing their call on the field, which is a key, core, important element to how Ultimate Peace Camp functions. Ultimate Peace is an organization that was founded in 2009. It's a non-profit. Its mission to build bridges of friendship, understanding, and fun for youth from different social and cultural backgrounds around the world. And the tool is Ultimate. That is what is used to achieve that goal. A bunch of players that were playing on teams in 2009 decided they wanted to run a clinic in Tel Aviv. That's kind of where it started. So there are year-round programs to Ultimate Peace. The main module, which is a large amount of the focus, is the Summer Camp Ultimate Peace, which is a residential Ultimate program which takes place in the summer. But there are many year-round programs. You have this belief and this dream, and what's so important to realize about these two things is that they are very real. It's not kind of a ethereal thing that you hear about once and then you forget about, or it's not lived, or it's lightly lived. It's believed deeply by the people that work there, by the people that attend the camp, by the people that intersect with all of those things all the time. Another picture from camp there from the field. It's a 501(c), as I said before, became that in 2012. Those 5 things are friendship, mutual respect, integrity, non-violence, and fun. I mentioned it before that the belief and the dream are 2 things that are believed in. Those 5 things, ask any kid that attends camp, they'll know those things immediately. They're printed on all the shirts. It's all over the place. One way an organization thrives is by living its mission, and the mission is very apparent. You might see me in the picture there. That's me with my girls team from 2 summers ago. They had the CITs, the counselors in training, ran a team building kind of event. There were different team building events, and one of them was this huge foam pit. And you can see me there in your bottom left right there, sitting down there. So there are community team practices. So year-round there are villages that have Ultimate teams, that have local coaches, some of them, and some of the groups meet and are coached by year-round residents of Israel and the West Bank who travel and coach those teams. You have multicultural tournaments, so they have hat tournaments, they have team tournaments, so Renana will send several teams. There'll be a team from Buena Nujadat that'll come down, but the idea is to get kids playing year-round in these communities, and right now 12 or 13 communities are involved, and it really could grow indefinitely. It's only limited now by funds. I'll talk more about that later. There is a youth league that was started, and then the big focus in the summer is the overnight camp, which I attend. And there's also a year-round CIT program, counselors in training. These are kind of the captains and assistant coaches on teams at camp who are leaders inside their own communities, who go through leadership training all year round. They do things like travel around as a team, and they actually came to the United States last year and did a U.S. tour where they played in tournaments. They did speaking engagements in New York, in Boston, New York, and I think Seattle. And definitely Seattle, but they did 3 cities and traveled the states. But those were all CITs that were attended camp and worked with the program all year round. Here's the geographic layout. I'll turn off the lights so you can see this a little more clearly. What you're looking at, you're seeing Israel, and then in green you see the West Bank, and you see the colored dots where these kids are coming in from. In orange, up in the north, you have Tuba, Buena Nujadat, Deburia, and Kfar Tova. In the yellow, you also see the Golan Heights. Green's the west. Green, there's a different green in it. I think some of the colors got shot. Oh, the green is in there for here. Sorry. Up close on the coastal region. You got Tamara, Arve, and Binyamina. Purple, Renana, it's a suburb of Tel Aviv. Kiryat Ona and Ain Rafa. and then the red down in the Negev Desert, really tropical place, is Bokur. It's very, very not tropical there. Then inside the West Bank in the blue, you have Bethlehem and Beit Sahor are the two big communities. Also Jericho is another community where the kids come in from.
Can I ask a question about that?
I'm going to do, if you got a short one, I'm going to do a lot at the end.
Real
but
short.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, do people know what the West Bank
Oh yeah,
is?
hold on. That's actually, thank you for asking such a wonderful question. A wonderful man works at Ultimate Peace, Jez. He's a Brit, now living in Israel, and he does tours all year round. It's a very serious business giving tours in Israel. And he does some very interesting tours, but he's one of the best educators I've ever run across in terms of understanding the vast complexities of this space. And one question he likes to ask people, all sorts of people, is raise your hand if you know definitively why it's called the West Bank. If you know, you're absolutely sure why you know it's called the West Bank.
Nice.
How many people have heard the phrase West Bank before? Okay, good. The hands up. Anybody who's sure they know why it's called the West Bank?
Yeah, I think.
This right here is a really interesting thing. The West Bank is the western bank of the Jordan River. There you go. Because everybody does something significant. Everybody gets to pitch in. The breakdown you see here, there, 40% Arab Israeli, 40% Jewish Israeli, and 20% Palestinian. It'd be great if it was 33, 33, 33. We definitely strive for evenness, but the realities of moving populations across some of the most complicated borders in the world make it so that much of the numbers are out of the control of the organization. We would like to see a better balance, but it's a little tough. So right now there are 2 week-long sessions. They're run in Manoff, which is the name for the youth village, which is located up here, up on the north coast, right about, it's really up here. There's the port city of Haifa. Anybody heard of Haifa before? Really famous university there. A couple Nobel Prizes came out of Haifa, the Technica there. So the camp itself is, we run it at that youth, it's a school year-round, it's a residential school, so we take over the entire school, and we have their dining hall, the fields, have everything there, which works out really well. And you'll notice that the budget in 2012 was $310,000. That's the year-round budget for the entire organization. If you can get inside the organization and see how it runs and fully understand how much gets done for only $310,000, it's pretty impressive. So this is what Ultimate Peace Camp looks like. So how did I get there, and what did I do while I was there? Well, here's a map of the region. Here's most of the places that I traveled to. You'll notice, based on the countries that are around and the countries I went to, there's a lot going on in that region. I was really interested in going to whenever I travel to a region, I'm really interested in going to as many places in that region as I possibly can. So I went to the one additional country I could get into, which was Jordan. So to get into Jordan, I came down to Eilat, which is the port city down here on the Red Sea, and went into Petra and Wadi Rum, which I'll talk about later. I was really interested in going and seeing more, but crossing into the Sinai Peninsula is not the best idea right now. And none of the neighboring countries are at all places you can go. Either you can't get in as an American, or you can, but then you'd never be able to get back into Israel. So the travel summer, I was there for 2 one-month trips. We're doing the same thing, if not longer, for this summer. Some of the places I went to, so you got Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in Israel. You got Bethlehem and Jericho and Beit Zahor. Beit Zahor is very close to Bethlehem in the West Bank, and so is Ramallah. Akko's up in the north coast of Israel. So is Haifa. Went down to Eilat. Boin and Nujadat's in the north central. Aqaba and Wadi Rum and Petra in Jordan. This is what the region looks like when compared to the United States. You have Israel right here. Israel, anybody know what state it most closely resembles, size-wise, what it's most closely linked to?
New Jersey?
Yeah, New Jersey in the news again, right. It's really, really close in size to New Jersey. 8 million square miles, West Bank is 2.2 of that. You would say it's 3,718,000 square miles. Population-wise, you'll see some numbers here that are pretty interesting. You've got the West Bank, which is 3 million people, 2.5 million non-Israeli Palestinians, and 430,000 Israeli citizens. Classification is really tricky, is nuanced, and I'll certainly talk about that more. But to give you an idea of the size, the basic thing here, it's really small. How long do you think it takes to get from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on a bus in traffic?
An hour?
Yeah, it's like an hour. It's like an hour. That's it. It's about an hour. So, I want to tell you 5 stories about my travels. First one is about my introduction to Israel, and that came in London. My flight took off from Boston. I landed in London at Heathrow, and my next flight was from Heathrow to Tel Aviv. My first flight was, I think, American Airlines or something like that. My second one coming in was El Al, which is national airline for Israel. Has anybody flown El Al before? Flown El Al? A few people. So I knew what I was going to experience in coming through different aspects of entering the Middle East in terms of security. And I had my security interview in line at London Heathrow. I had my El Al security interview, and I had this wonderful, very nice man interviewing me right there. And I'd seen kind of how the interviews were going to go because they were happening right in front of me, not that far away. And it came to be my turn, and I tend to talk too much anyway, so he starts asking me questions, and I just keep talking and talking and talking for about 15 minutes. He's asking questions, and he just stops, okay, that's nice, I'll be right back, and he leaves for about 2 minutes and comes back with somebody else. Doesn't really explain what's going on. The next person just proceeds to ask me the exact same questions that they asked before. Well, he stood right there about 2 feet away. I just kept on doing it, and I said, okay, that's nice, you can go. So I was the last person through security. I go sit down, and I had one carry-on. I was going to Israel for 33 days, so I needed to bring everything. And I blog when I travel anyway, but I was going to be one of the media bloggers for the camp specifically. So I had packed everything that could survive checkage in my big bag, but then I had one wheel bag, and all it had was my electronics for blogging, so like hard drives and video cameras and all sorts of stuff. So I sit down, and of course they have to check my check bag at the gate for El Al, and the guy opens it, and I see him visibly go, because every single thing that is an electronic piece of equipment has to get swabbed. Every single one. So I've carefully packed everything. So first travel tip, when you are going to Israel, it's not about packing for efficiency, it's packing with the ability to repack your things in an airport. So I waited, and the guy's like, oh, okay. So I had the nice experience of like repacking my bag as he's swabbing. You know what swabbing is? Does everybody know what I'm talking about? You take a little swab, they put it in a machine, and it tests for trace elements of explosives. Repacked everything, got on my plane, it was fine. But that was my first kind of experience with the Middle East. A day at camp is a lot like a day at any camp you've ever been to. Kids wake up, we have breakfast together. I would imagine the dining hall is louder than anything you have ever experienced in your entire life, mainly because table cheering is not only encouraged, it's really, really encouraged, and it's almost continuous through all meals. Kids wake up, they eat, we do a morning assembly where we'll sing kind of like how you saw in the earlier video. They'll come out, we'll have morning practices, we'll have lunch, we'll then go to the pool because it's generally really hot. It's a nice, one of the grassy areas in the middle of the campus. We're scrimmaging right there, and the rest of the activities will be not just ultimate, we have all sorts of CIT-led activities, and there's all sorts of crafts. There's a lot of things that you would automatically identify. What's really nice, and what's not nice, but what's the most surprising thing to me was that it's not as though something radically different happens camp-wise at Ultimate Peace. It's the fact that something quite normal happens in a place where normal is not the norm, with a whole group of kids that would never normally get together ever. What you're seeing right here is the campers from Bethlehem get to camp. It's the main field complex in the middle. They're doing a kind of like a patience drill right now. We get an idea of what the atmosphere is like. Got palm trees. Found a couple chameleons walking across the field last summer. Like the real chameleons.
Ultimate Peace. Ultimate Peace to me is the perfect mix of many things I like in my life and I love in my life.
هو بالنسبة لي إنه Ultimate Peace أكثر الأشياء اللي بحبها بحياتي.
I love Ultimate. I love teaching it to new people. I love new places.
أول إشي بحب الألتيميت اللعبة، بحب يعلمها على ناس غيره، وبحب يزور أماكن جديدة.
And I believe that Ultimate can do lots and lots of good things.
وهو بيآمن إنه الألتيميت بيساوي كثير أشياء مليحة إيجابية.
And for me, I believe you have to meet people in order to know them and to understand them.
وبالنسبة له إنه لازم نقابل ناس جداد عشان إنه نفهمهم ونحكي معهم.
So I'm here to help teach, but mainly for me to learn from all of you.
هو بالنسبة له إنه هو هنا عشان يعلم وعشان يعني ياخد أشياء.
And thank you for listening to me, and it's my honor to be here.
وشكرا إن عم نسمع له وشرف كبير له إنه هو هون.
Anybody else want to say anything? Anybody? Okay, so let's stand up now then. Let's stand up.
Okay, so you saw a few things there. First of all, this motion, this is instead of clapping at camp, the kids would do this. It's a lot easier to keep control of a group, and it's a great way to replace clapping. You'd also notice that everything I was saying was getting translated into Arabic. Camp Ultimate Peace is actually a trilingual camp. During all assemblies, everything is spoken in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. And then most of the time, you have the double translation in any team environment. At that time, the group of girls that I was coaching, everybody could either understand English fluently or Arabic fluently, so we didn't need to translate into Hebrew. But for the most part, when coaching any more than 10 kids at a time, you'd have to say one or two sentences, and then it would get translated into Arabic, and then it would get translated into Hebrew. Then you'd say something in English, and then you'd do the same thing over. So it's a fantastic way to become a better teacher. Fantastic way to become a better teacher. Some of the people you saw that, the woman taking the video was one of my Anna college student. You know, Ava was also there, the girl from St. Johnsbury who came out to be a coach. So she was one of my also assistant coaches. The woman sitting up on the table behind me, Chelsea, group in Orange County, California, now lives and is now an Israeli citizen and works for the Israeli military, working on Aliyah. Anybody know what Aliyah is? Aliyah? To rise up, to return. Talk about that. And then you had on the other side, there was a woman from Hong Kong who was coming in to be a coach. So I had a coaching staff from all over the place. A few places here that you might recognize. You've got the Dome of the Rock, the Wailing or Western Wall. You've got the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and then you have a beach in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is kind of a hopping Mediterranean city. It's up late, it's lit, it's very much alive, very modern. You recognize many aspects of life in Tel Aviv as paralleling lives and what you see in your life in many cities that you live in. There are some incredible, notable differences if you ever visited Tel Aviv, but for the most part, you feel like you're in any city you've been in before. After camp ended, I traveled for a week. This is from 2 summers ago. went into Jerusalem and went into the Old City, and then went and you can go into the Temple Mount structure, and you can go up and see the Dome on the Rock. The Western Wall. You know why the Western? Who can tell me why the Western Wall is important? Another quiz question for the group. Matt May, why is the Western Wall important?
It's a place for confession.
Place for confession. Good, eloquent answer. Anybody know why the Western Wall is important? Yeah.
Is it because during the when the people destroyed the temple, that was the only wall that survived?
That's the only one I thought for the Solomon Great.
There's a lot going on here. You can come up with a million reasons why every square inch of Jerusalem is super important. So there's no one answer to any question, really. That's kind of the exercise I was getting at. Church of the Holy Sepulchre is also in Jerusalem. You got like the last, I think, 6 stations of the cross are there. It's a pretty interesting place. But I got to travel and see a whole bunch of this region 2 summers ago and last summer. I returned to all of these places last summer as well. Here's what it looks like from southern Tel Aviv in an area called Jaffa, looking north. In the Old City in Jerusalem. That's the Dome of the Rock right there. And over to the right you will see the Dome of the Holy Sepulchre. Pass. It's the Western Wall. See that? It's the entrance right there to the Dome of the Rock.
Open for maybe 1 hour or 2 hours.
Well, no, it's only open for 1 hour as far as I know. Yeah, get in for about an hour at a time. That's the dome itself. What's interesting is no matter how much research you do before you go to Jerusalem, you might think you understand why everybody's going to certain specific spots and specific buildings and doing specific things, and then you get there and you have no idea half the time why that certain spot is really important. So you're flipping through something trying to figure out what's going on around you. This is Jordan. So after Jerusalem...
I'm sorry, Josh, can I ask you one question that's occurred to me?
Absolutely.
Given the security concerns, did you find any places where they wouldn't let you film, where you started to film or started to take pictures and were told that you couldn't?
That's a really good question, and I would have to think, but no. No, I mean, you saw me. No, I'm not kidding. Like, and that wasn't surreptitious filming either. That wasn't me. So that was me at the Dome of the Rock filming. Totally fine. Church of the Holy Sepulchre. No, this wasn't like going to the Vatican or the Sistine Chapel where they're trying to beat you with sticks if you take pictures of the David, which they actually tried to do, I think. But no, I can't think of it. I mean, there were definitely places where I didn't want to film, which I'm sure I wouldn't have been allowed. Anything with regards to direct security presence, like security checkpoints. That being said, in any sort of filming, you're going to see security presence because it's everywhere. But no. So what you're seeing right here, yeah, I'll do more questions at the end. But what you're seeing right,
I think we
go ahead.
We don't have a lot of time.
Oh,
so
so
I think we may actually want to start either concluding or opening up questions.
I need at least 5 more minutes here, okay? I'll get going here, I'll speed up. So you got Jordan. You might recognize some of what you see in the middle there. Anybody know what that's called? The actual name of that?
Petra?
That's Petra, yeah, but do you know what that building is called? It's the Treasury. Anybody know why it's really, really famous besides the fact that it's really cool? No one's seen Indiana Jones, really?
Yeah, that's where the
Holy Grail is supposed to be. It's not there. There's nothing actually in there. There's one room when you walk in. You can't actually walk that close. Went down to Eilat. You crossed into Jordan. Went into Wadi Rum, which is a desert Bedouin area. and then went north into Petra, which is this multi-kilometer long valley with these unbelievable stone carvings. There's tons of them that look just like that. That's not actually the biggest one, that's just the one that's most famous from Indiana Jones. And this is what it looks like in Wadi Rum. The most impressive thing about it, besides its beauty, was the fact that there was total and absolute silence. Middle of the day. No sound, no wind, no rustling, no animal, nothing. Totally, totally silent. This is Petra. And that's the treasury. It's about 108 degrees right now in that video. Okay, few last things here. Hamuda is the player I mentioned at the beginning, who I met, who went to Hotchkiss. He was from Bethlehem, so he was a assistant coach that summer. I came in to Bethlehem after camp and met his family. This is notable because as I was sitting around with his brother, and I knew this before I came in, when Hamuda was going to school in the United States at Hotchkiss, his coach, who was the international director, said, "You should join Ultimate Peace. You'd be perfect for it. You play Ultimate. You're from Bethlehem." He said, I really, really can't do that. My brother is sitting in an Israeli prison right now. Can't do that. David Thompson, the coach, asked him again the next year and said, "You should really do this. I think it's something you should do." So Hamuda said, "I'm going to do this." Parents weren't really too thrilled with it, but then they started to support him. And he is now, he should be coming back. He's now at Hobart. It's a little challenging because once going back and forth can be tough. But then I came in and met his brother, who was out of prison. That's him right there at his wedding. Went to the second day of his wedding, and it's a fascinating story, and that I'm not going to get into now, but nothing is ever simple. Nothing is ever simple. And this is him speaking, and I really want you to hear this.
The sort of how your loved ones, the people most important, view your interaction with Ultimate Peace, how they view you working with Ultimate Peace, and maybe, I don't know, how you ever talk about your parents, or I don't know if I'm going to go any further than what you did for the rest of you as well. I'm really interested.
Well, my family, I'm just going to talk about my family. My family itself, I have an uncle who's against it, and I have other uncles who are with it, and my dad and my mom are 100% with it. My brother was against it before knowing about it. Because my brother was in jail, as I said, when I told him I'm going to an ultimate camp with the Israelis, he was like, "I'm 100% against it." Like, I'm 100% against it. And now, after knowing what we do in the camp, that we don't bring politics at all. We don't do anything about politics. We don't have to do anything about politics. All we do is just play Ultimate, which I love the game. He actually started to love it. And then he was the one actually talked to my little brother to join. And then my little brother joined the camp, is joining the camp. So, like, in a way, there's like, it's just like a thing. Like, when you put, it's like the community that I live in is a small bubble. If you add something different to it, they're not going to accept it right away. It just needs time. And that's what happened. The first year, as I said, everybody was against it, and I still did it. And then after doing it, more people started accepting it and wanting to do it as well. And with time, I think it's going to grow more and more. So.
That picture of those four people you saw up there, just as a side note, you have Hamuda from Bethlehem, goes to school in the United States, goes to Hotchkiss, grew up in a refugee camp. You have Dan, who's a secular Israeli, served in the Israeli military, who's a film producer and ultimate coach. You had Kareem, who is an Arab Israeli, who is administrator at Ultimate Peace, and then you had Sarah, who is an American living in Haifa, working at Ultimate Peace. So you had this whole panel of people, and that's just like a regular sampling of people that work together. The 5 key things I learned while I was there: everyone should visit. Everyone. Everybody has a reason to visit the Middle East. Everybody does. Teenagers are teenagers no matter where you go. So I'm sitting in Hamuda's house in the West Bank or in Israel. Everybody's checking in on Facebook. Everybody's messaging each other. Everybody's wearing jeans. Everybody's worried about the same types of things that teenagers are. Yes, there are different undercurrents and certain things that are very different about life in these places, but teenagers are teenagers no matter where you go. I know nothing. I counted myself as relatively educated on Middle Eastern politics, the Middle East, Ultimate, before I went to the Middle East and played more Ultimate and coached more Ultimate. I know nothing. There is an infinite amount to learn, especially about the Middle East. Anybody can change their mind. We talk about strange intractability in the United States, like, it's impossible, that person's gonna change their mind on that issue. We don't know what we're talking about here. Anybody can change their mind. I've seen people change their minds about things that are so far beyond what I normally could conceptualize myself that I think anybody can change their mind. And last, really nothing is impossible. It's disappointing when someone, you can't do that. That there's always a first. There's always a way to do something. And on that, keep these links up there.